What would you do if everything you worked for, your success, your achievements, and even your dignity was questioned in an instant? Marcus Carter, a self-made tech CEO, had it all: a thriving company, a private jet, and the respect of his peers. But one fateful morning, a routine business trip turned into a public spectacle that would test his resilience and redefine his purpose. From an unjust detention that goes viral to a pivotal decision that changes the course of his career, Marcus's story is one of perseverance, advocacy, and transformation. But how does he rise from humiliation to become a voice for change? And what sacrifices does he make along the way? This is a story you don't want to miss. If you're ready to explore Marcus's journey, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you were in Marcus's shoes? Now let's dive into above and beyond. The sunlight filtered gently through the sheer curtains of Marcus Carter's bedroom, casting a soft glow across the room. The hum of central air provided a steady backdrop to the morning stillness. Marcus stood in front of his mirror, tugging at the cuffs of his crisp, white dress shirt. His tall frame reflected the confidence of a seasoned professional. But if you looked closely, you'd see the faintest crease of worry at the corners of his eyes. Marcus, now 42, had come a long way from the south side of Chicago, where dreams were often deferred by reality. His success wasn't an accident. It was the result of years of determination, countless late nights, and sacrifices that had tested every fiber of his being. He was the founder and CEO of Carter Shield Solutions, a cybersecurity firm known for protecting small businesses and nonprofits from digital threats. The journey had not been easy. He'd built the company brick by metaphorical brick, beginning with a tiny team in a cramped apartment, juggling freelance projects to keep the lights on. Now Carter Shield was a name that carried weight in the tech industry. They had contracts with Fortune 500 companies and were on the verge of expanding globally. Today was critical. Marcus was flying to Boston to finalize a partnership with Vanguard Systems, a tech giant that could propel Carter Shield to unprecedented heights. The deal would secure not only Carter Shield's future, but also create opportunities for dozens of employees who, like Marcus, had faced barriers and needed someone to believe in them. Standing before the mirror, Marcus adjusted the knot of his navy blue tie for the third time. "Tight, but not too tight," he muttered. He'd worn this tie for every major milestone of his career, a quiet nod to tradition and superstition. Downstairs, the house was calm, almost meditative. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, though Marcus hadn't yet touched his cup. His home, while spacious and modern, was far from ostentatious. A four-bedroom structure nestled in a leafy Chicago suburb. It reflected his ethos of understated elegance. Framed photos lined the walls of the hallway. A young Marcus in a cap and gown at his college graduation. His late mother, Diane, beaming with pride at his first office ribbon-cutting ceremony. And his small team celebrating the launch of Carter Shield's first major product. Marcus paused at a photo of his mother, her warm smile frozen in time. She had been his biggest supporter, mortgaging her modest home to give him the seed money he needed when no bank would. Her sacrifices had always been his North Star, reminding him to push forward no matter how daunting the odds. He whispered to the photo, "We're almost there, Mom. Almost." As he stepped into the kitchen, he grabbed his sleek black briefcase from the counter. His phone buzzed on the granite surface, lighting up with a text message from his assistant, Sophie King. "Car's here. Let's secure this win." Marcus smiled at the message. Sophie had been with him since the company was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. She wasn't just an assistant. She was his right hand, managing his schedule, overseeing communication, and in many ways, acting as a sounding board. He shot back a quick reply, "On my way. Thanks for everything." The silver town car idled quietly in the driveway. David, his driver of several years, stepped out, opening the back door with a familiar smile. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," David said, his voice warm and easy. "Morning, David," Marcus replied as he climbed in. "Traffic looks good today?" "Shouldn't be a problem," David said. "We'll have you at the hangar in 20 minutes." The ride was smooth, the early morning streets of Chicago still waking up. Marcus opened his tablet, scrolling through the presentation slides he'd already memorized. Each graph, each statistic, each talking point had been painstakingly prepared. The Vanguard partnership would revolutionize Carter Shield's operations. But more than that, it was personal. Marcus often thought about how many young, ambitious people like him were never given the chance to prove their worth because of systemic biases and structural barriers. This partnership wasn't just about growth. It was about showing what was possible when someone believed in you. His phone buzzed again. It was a text from Terrence, his nephew who was studying computer science at Northwestern University. "Uncle Marcus, good luck today. You're gonna crush it." Marcus chuckled, typing back. "Thanks, T. Stay focused in class, okay? I'll see you this weekend." The private hangar was a pristine space of white walls and polished concrete, illuminated by the soft morning light streaming through large windows. Marcus's jet stood waiting, its sleek frame a testament to how far he had come. Marcus stepped out of the car, briefcase in hand, and nodded to Sarah, the hangar manager, who greeted him with her usual cheer. "Morning, Mr. Carter. Your flight's all set. Weather's clear all the way to Boston." "Thanks, Sarah," Marcus replied with a smile. He always made a point to greet her by name, a small but meaningful gesture he carried from his upbringing. As he approached the jet, his pilot, James, appeared at the bottom of the stairs. "Morning, Mr. Carter," James said. "We're all fueled up and ready to go. Should be a smooth flight." "Good to hear, James," Marcus said, shaking his hand. "Let's make it a good day." The jet's interior was as immaculate as the hangar, with plush leather seats and a small conference table equipped with power outlets and a wireless charging pad. Marcus took his seat, setting his briefcase on the table and opening his laptop. The cabin was quiet as the flight attendants went through their final preparations. Marcus leaned back for a moment, closing his eyes. The enormity of the day ahead weighed on him, but it was a weight he welcomed. "You're ready," he reminded himself. "You've earned this." The flight attendant approached with a polite smile. "Would you like coffee before takeoff, Mr. Carter?" "Yes, please," Marcus replied. "Black." As she disappeared into the galley, Marcus checked his phone one last time. Another message from Sophie. "Vanguard's board is on site early. They're eager to meet you. All prepped on their end." He smiled. Sophie was as efficient as ever. Everything was lined up perfectly, or so it seemed. The sound of raised voices outside the jet pulled Marcus from his thoughts. Frowning, he glanced out the window. Two uniformed officers were walking across the hangar, their strides purposeful. Marcus's chest tightened slightly. It wasn't unusual to see security in the hangar, but something about their body language set him on edge. Moments later, the flight attendant reappeared, her expression tense. "Mr. Carter, there are two officers requesting to speak with you," she said, her voice low. Marcus stood, adjusting his tie out of habit. "Officers? Did they say why?" "No, sir. They said it was urgent." Marcus nodded, though his mind raced. He'd done everything by the book, every form filed, every fee paid. What could they possibly want? Stepping out of the jet, Marcus descended the stairs slowly, his shoes clicking against the metal. The officers stood at the bottom, their hands resting near their belts in a way that felt casual yet deliberate. "Good morning, officers," Marcus said evenly. "How can I help you?" The taller of the two, whose badge read Matthews, stepped forward. "We've received reports of suspicious activity involving this aircraft." Marcus blinked. "Suspicious activity? I'm the owner of this jet. Carte Shield Solution. You can verify everything." Matthews barely glanced at Marcus's ID before pocketing it. "Step down from the aircraft, sir," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. As Marcus complied, he felt a familiar unease settle in his chest. The meeting in Boston suddenly felt very far away. Marcus descended the last few steps of the jet staircase, his polished leather shoes landing with a soft tap against the hangar floor. His posture was calm and measured, but a sense of unease prickled beneath the surface. He'd been in high-pressure boardrooms, faced down skeptical investors, and walked into spaces where he wasn't expected to succeed, but this was different. The two officers stood in stark contrast to the polished serenity of the hangar. Matthews, tall and broad, radiated a controlled authority, while his partner, Peterson, was smaller but no less imposing. Their stances carried an unspoken air of judgment, the weight of assumptions pressing down on the conversation before it had even begun. "Officers," Marcus began, keeping his tone professional. "I'm Marcus Carter, the owner of this aircraft. Can I ask what this is about?" Matthews glanced at his partner before speaking. "We received reports of unusual activity involving this jet. We need to verify your identity and your purpose here." Marcus furrowed his brow. "Unusual activity? My team and I often work odd hours due to our international clients. I'm flying to Boston for a business meeting. My assistant can provide any documentation you need." Matthews remained unsmiling. "We'll need you to step away from the aircraft while we conduct our investigation." Marcus's stomach tightened. His ID and business cards were already in Matthews's hands, but it was clear they weren't enough. "I understand you have a job to do," Marcus said, carefully choosing his words. "But everything here is in order. My ownership records, flight plan, even the staff here can verify my identity." Peterson shifted his weight, resting his hand near his holstered weapon. The gesture wasn't overt, but it was deliberate enough to send a chill through Marcus. He'd seen this body language before on the streets of Chicago, during routine traffic stops, even at high-end stores where he was followed instead of assisted. "Sir," Matthews said, cutting through Marcus's thoughts, "this is a matter of protocol. If everything checks out, we'll let you proceed." Marcus suppressed the sharp retort rising in his throat. Instead, he took a slow breath and nodded. "Let's get this over with, then." The officers' investigation began with a perimeter check of the hangar, their radios crackling intermittently as they called in updates. Marcus stood to the side, his briefcase still in hand, watching as they treated his private jet like a crime scene. Behind him, the hangar staff had gathered in small clusters, their expressions ranging from concerned to bewildered. Sarah, the manager, hovered by her desk, phone in hand, her knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, their whispered conversations carrying an air of unease. "This doesn't look good," one of the mechanics muttered to another. "Why are they even questioning him?" the other replied. "We all know Mr. Carter." Despite their murmurs of support, Marcus felt exposed, like a specimen under a microscope. His success, so carefully earned, so meticulously maintained, suddenly felt fragile. Matthews and Peterson returned after their sweep, both wearing expressions that suggested they hadn't found what they were looking for, but weren't ready to back down. "Mr. Carter," Matthews said, "we need to ask you to step into the office while we sort this out." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You've seen my ID, my credentials. You've spoken to my staff. What more do you need?" Matthews didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured toward the small security office at the far end of the hangar. The walk to the office felt like a parade of shame. Marcus held his head high, but inside, he was seething. "How many times do I have to prove myself?" Inside the office, Marcus was directed to sit in a plastic chair bolted to the floor. Matthews and Peterson stood across from him, their radios buzzing faintly in the background. "Tell us again how you came to own this aircraft," Peterson said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Marcus met his gaze evenly. "I built a company from scratch, Carter Shield Solutions. It's a cybersecurity firm. We specialize in protecting small businesses from digital threats. This jet is a tool for business travel. Everything about it is legitimate, and all records are available for verification." Peterson raised an eyebrow. "A cybersecurity firm? Huh. Must be doing pretty well to afford a private jet." Marcus's hands tightened around his briefcase. "Yes, we are." The subtle disbelief in Peterson's tone wasn't new to Marcus. He'd encountered it at bank counters, during home purchases, even at charity galas. The unspoken question always lingered. How did someone like you achieve this? As the officers continued their questioning, Marcus's thoughts drifted. He remembered the first time he'd pitched Carter Shield to investors, walking into a conference room filled with skeptical faces. "We like the concept," one investor had said, barely glancing at Marcus. "But we'd feel more comfortable if someone with a proven track record took the lead." Marcus had swallowed his frustration, working twice as hard to prove himself. He thought about his mother's sacrifices, The nights she'd stayed up helping him draft business proposals, and the countless times she'd reminded him, "Don't let them tell you who you are." But sitting in that cramped office with two officers dissecting his life, Marcus felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. For years, he'd told himself that success would insulate him from prejudice. Now he wasn't so sure. The younger officer entered the room, holding a tablet. "Sir, you might want to look at this," he said, handing it to Matthews. On the screen was Marcus's Forbes profile, complete with a photo of him standing proudly in front of Carter Shield's headquarters. The article detailed his rise as an entrepreneur, highlighting his contributions to the tech industry and his commitment to mentorship. Matthews's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Peterson leaned over to look at the screen, his skepticism faltering. "This is you?" Peterson asked, his tone tinged with disbelief. Marcus folded his arms. "I told you who I was. You chose not to believe me." Silence filled the room, the weight of Marcus's words hanging heavy in the air. Matthews cleared his throat. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding." Marcus stood, his gaze steady. "A misunderstanding? No, this is something else entirely." The officers didn't respond. Instead, Matthews gestured toward the door. "You're free to go, Mr. Carter. We'll be filing a report." Marcus stepped past them, his briefcase in hand. The humiliation of the last hour burned in his chest, but he refused to let it show. As he walked out of the office, the hangar staff parted to let him through. Phones were raised, recording every step. Marcus met their gazes with quiet dignity, his head held high. When he reached the jet, James was waiting at the stairs, his expression a mixture of concern and anger. "Ready for takeoff, Mr. Carter?" James asked. Marcus nodded, climbing the stairs without a word. The jet's cabin, once a sanctuary of Marcus's success, now felt claustrophobic. He settled into his leather seat and stared out of the window as the plane taxied toward the runway. The engines hummed softly, but Marcus barely heard them. His mind replayed the scene in the hangar, Matthews' skeptical gaze, Peterson's dismissive tone, the flash of phones capturing his humiliation. The flight attendant approached cautiously, her usual professionalism tinged with concern. "Would you like coffee, Mr. Carter?" Marcus looked up, realizing how tightly he'd been gripping the armrests. "No, thank you," he said, his voice quieter than usual. As the plane ascended, Marcus retrieved his phone from the table in front of him. It had been vibrating non-stop since he'd boarded. Notifications from texts, emails, and social media filled the screen. At the top of the list was a message from Sophie. "Videos from the hangar are online. They're spreading fast. Call me when you land." Marcus sighed, setting the phone down without replying. He didn't need to watch the videos to know what they showed. The scene would play out the same. A black man, well-dressed and composed, being handcuffed and led away from his private jet. The thought of his employees seeing the footage, of his nephew Terrence watching it, made his chest tighten. What message does this send to them? 2 hours later, Marcus's jet touched down in Boston. As the wheels screeched against the tarmac, he braced himself for the whirlwind waiting on the ground. Sophie was already at the terminal when he arrived. Her expression was grim as she handed him a tablet. "Have you seen it yet?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "I figured I'd wait until I had some context." She tapped the screen, pulling up one of the videos. It showed Marcus being led across the hangar, his wrists bound in handcuffs, flanked by the two officers. Voices in the background narrated the scene with varying degrees of outrage and disbelief. "This is ridiculous. That's Marcus Carter. He owns the jet. Unreal. Can't even fly your own plane without being profiled. Hope someone gets fired for this." Marcus exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening as he handed the tablet back to Sophie. "What's the reaction been?" Sophie hesitated. "Most people are outraged. It's trending across multiple platforms. Flying while black is one of the hashtags. But there's pushback too. Some are saying the officers were just doing their jobs. Others are less kind." She didn't elaborate, but Marcus didn't need her to. He knew what the comments would say. He'd seen them before, under stories of black men and women who dared to exist in spaces where they weren't expected. "Well," Marcus said, straightening his tie, "we can't control what people think. but we can control how we respond. Sophie led him to a waiting car, her updates flowing as smoothly as ever. Vanguard's board knows what happened. They're sympathetic, but they've asked if we need more time before the meeting. Marcus shook his head. No, the deal is too important. We're moving forward. The meeting room at Vanguard's headquarters was sleek and imposing, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown Boston. The board members greeted Marcus warmly, their smiles polite but tinged with curiosity. He knew they'd seen the videos. As Marcus began his presentation, he forced himself to focus on the slides, the data, the vision he'd spent months crafting. He spoke with precision and confidence, but beneath it all was a simmering frustration. When the meeting concluded, the board members expressed their admiration for Carter Shield's innovative solutions. They agreed to move forward with the partnership, but Marcus couldn't shake the sense that the incident had cast a shadow over the proceedings. Back at his hotel, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the glowing skyline. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from investors, board members, and reporters. But one message stood out, a text from Terrence. Saw the videos, Uncle Marcus. Are you okay? The simplicity of the question hit harder than Marcus expected. He thought about Terrence, just 19, navigating a world where success didn't always mean safety. Marcus couldn't ignore the responsibility he felt not just to his nephew, but to everyone who saw themselves in his story. He picked up his laptop and began typing. Not the carefully curated press release his PR team had prepared, but something raw and personal. To anyone watching the events at the airport unfold, I want to say this. I'm fine. But this isn't just about me. It's about the reality that so many people face daily. Success doesn't erase bias. Wealth doesn't shield you from assumptions. I've spent my career proving that Black entrepreneurs belong in every room, every board meeting, every conversation about innovation. But incidents like this remind us that progress isn't enough. We need systemic change. I will continue to fight, not just for my company, but for the next generation who deserve to believe that their dreams are valid. Thank you for your support. Let's turn this moment into momentum. Marcus hit publish. Within minutes, the statement began circulating online. The reactions poured in, some supportive, some skeptical, but one thing was clear. Marcus's voice had struck a chord. The next morning, Marcus appeared on Good Morning America. Seated across from the host, he recounted the incident with a mix of composure and candor. It wasn't just about being stopped, Marcus explained. It was about the assumptions behind it. Assumptions that, despite everything I've built, I didn't belong in that space. The interview went viral, sparking conversations across the country. Other Black professionals began sharing their own stories of bias, creating a groundswell of solidarity and advocacy. Back in Chicago, Marcus received an email from a young entrepreneur named Renee Hayes. She described how she'd been overlooked in her job despite her qualifications, and how Marcus's story had given her the courage to start her own cybersecurity firm. Your story reminded me that we belong in these spaces, Renee wrote. Thank you for not staying silent. Marcus replied personally, offering mentorship and resources through Carter Shield's newly established foundation for underrepresented tech founders. As he closed his laptop, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. The humiliation he'd endured had ignited something bigger than himself, a movement to ensure that no one else would have to fight the same battles alone. The board meeting with Carter Shield's executives began in somber silence. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his posture as composed as ever, but he could sense the tension radiating from his team. The video of his airport detention had gone viral, and the implications for the company's image were undeniable. One of the senior board members, Linda Jameson, finally broke the silence. Marcus, she began, her tone cautious, you know we're all behind you personally. But this situation has created challenges for Carter Shield's brand. Some investors are nervous, and a few clients have already expressed concerns. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. I understand their concerns. But let's be clear, this isn't a challenge we shy away from. Carter Shield was built to protect the vulnerable. That's still our mission. Another board member, Robert Klein, interjected. With all due respect, Marcus, we're a cybersecurity firm, not a social advocacy organization. If we make this about politics, we risk alienating key partners." The words hung in the air like a weight. Marcus leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "This isn't politics, Robert. This is about ethics. About showing the world that Carter Shield stands for more than just profit." Linda hesitated before speaking again. "We're not saying you're wrong, Marcus. But how do we strike the balance? How do we address this without jeopardizing everything we've built?" Marcus sat back, folding his hands. "By being honest, transparent. We don't hide from what happened, but we also don't let it define us. I'll address this directly publicly, and then we'll refocus on what we do best, delivering top-tier cybersecurity solutions." The room remained quiet for a moment before Linda nodded. "All right, let's trust the process." The following week, Marcus announced the creation of the Carter Shield Foundation, a nonprofit initiative dedicated to empowering underrepresented entrepreneurs in tech. The foundation would provide mentorship, seed funding, and advocacy for individuals facing systemic barriers. The announcement was met with a mix of praise and skepticism. Supporters lauded Marcus's commitment to giving back, while critics questioned whether the move was a distraction from Carter Shield's core business. Marcus, however, remained focused. He personally reached out to a dozen young entrepreneurs whose stories had touched him. Among them was Jordan Fields, a recent college graduate with a groundbreaking idea for affordable cybersecurity solutions for small businesses. During their first meeting, Marcus listened intently as Jordan explained his vision, his excitement contagious. "I've pitched this to a few investors," Jordan admitted, "but they all said I don't have enough experience." Marcus smiled. "Experience comes with opportunity. Let's make sure you get yours." Not everyone embraced Marcus's initiatives. Some investors withdrew their support, citing concerns about the company's direction. A few clients quietly ended their contracts, wary of the public attention surrounding Marcus. One email in particular stood out. "Mr. Carter, while we respect your personal experiences, we feel your recent focus on social issues is incompatible with our business objectives. Effective immediately, we're ending our partnership." The rejection stung, but Marcus refused to waver. For every lost client, a new one emerged, companies that valued integrity and innovation as much as Marcus did. Linda approached him after one particularly long day. "You know," she said, "I wasn't sure about all this at first. But watching you fight for what you believe in, it's inspiring. Keep going, Marcus." The pivotal moment came during a live interview at a tech summit. Marcus had been invited to discuss Carter Shield's latest advancements, but the conversation quickly shifted to his personal experiences and the foundation's work. A member of the audience raised a pointed question during the Q&A session. "Mr. Carter, don't you think your advocacy work distracts from your company's mission? Shouldn't you focus on business instead of social issues?" Marcus paused, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The room was silent, the audience hanging on his response. "Our mission is cybersecurity," Marcus began, his voice steady. "But cybersecurity isn't just about technology. It's about protecting people, ensuring that everyone, regardless of their background, has the tools to succeed in a digital world." He looked directly at the questioner. "We can't claim to protect the vulnerable if we ignore the barriers that make them vulnerable in the first place. Advocacy isn't a distraction. It's a responsibility." The room erupted into applause, the sound swelling around him like a wave. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since the airport incident, he felt truly understood. As the months passed, Marcus began to see the ripple effects of his advocacy. The Carter Shield Foundation had supported over 50 entrepreneurs in its first quarter, with several projects already gaining traction in the industry. The airport where Marcus had been detained announced new anti-bias training programs for its staff. While the changes were incremental, they represented a step in the right direction. One day, Marcus received a letter from Renee Hayes, a mentee he'd worked with through the foundation. "Mr. Carter, I just signed my first client. Your belief in me made this possible. Thank you for showing me that my dreams are valid." Marcus smiled as he read the letter. Moments like this reminded him why he'd chosen to speak out, despite the challenges. At home, Marcus found himself reconnecting with his family. He spent more time with his nephew, Terrence, who had been inspired by Marcus's journey to pursue his own dreams in tech. One evening, over dinner, Terrence shared an idea for an app that would help small nonprofits manage their cybersecurity needs. "I've been working on it in my free time," Terrence said, his excitement shining through. Marcus leaned forward, his interest piqued. "That's a great concept. Let's talk about how we could develop it further." Terrence's face lit up, and Marcus felt a deep sense of pride. The next generation was already stepping up, ready to take the baton. 6 months after the airport incident, Marcus stood on stage at a gala honoring leaders in tech. The room was filled with industry luminaries, but all eyes were on Marcus as he approached the podium. As he accepted the award for innovation and advocacy, he took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. "This award isn't just for me," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. "It's for everyone who dares to dream, who refuses to let barriers define them. Success isn't just about what we achieve, it's about how we use that success to lift others. Let's keep lifting." The audience rose to their feet, the applause reverberating throughout the hall. Marcus felt a swell of emotion, but kept his composure. This moment wasn't about vindication, it was about purpose. Later that night, aboard his jet, Marcus gazed out at the stars through the window. His phone buzzed with a message from Jordan Fields. "Mr. Carter, I secured my first investor today. Thank you for believing in me." Marcus smiled, replying, "The world is yours, Jordan. Keep building." As the jet soared through the night, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The journey had been far from easy, but it had been worth every step. The world was changing, slowly but surely. And this time, Marcus wasn't just along for the ride, he was helping steer the course. As the jet cruised through the quiet night, Marcus leaned back in his seat, his thoughts drifting to the future. The challenges he'd faced had strengthened his resolve, and the opportunities ahead felt limitless not just for himself, but for everyone his story had touched. He pulled out his laptop and opened a blank document. The title came to him instantly, "Building a Legacy, Turning Struggles into Strength." Marcus smiled. There was so much more to do, and he was ready to keep fighting, keep inspiring, and keep building a world where success wasn't defined by the obstacles you face, but by the bridges you built for others. If Marcus's journey resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Join us as we explore the lives of those who rise above challenges and pave the way for others. Click the bell icon to stay notified of our latest uploads, because stories like Marcus's deserve to be heard. Together, let's inspire change one story at a time.